Okay, thank you everyone for being here. This is the FY25 volunteer orientation, and we really just have two agenda items today, as well as at the end, answering any questions that you all might have. We're always a resource at the village office, and also the council liaisons will always be there to support you throughout this year. So if there is anything that comes up throughout the year, we can always help you. And the two agenda items for today is one, I'm going to turn it over to Ron Bolt, our village attorney right now, to go over two pieces of information. One is the Open Meetings Act, which is a requirement for all municipalities in Maryland, as well as the Public Information Act. So Ron will go through that, and I'm sure he'll have a very interesting presentation. So Ron, take it away.
Thanks, Michael. And this is meant to be an interactive discussion. So if questions come up, feel free to ask questions. And if I start seeing anyone fall asleep, I might just ask you a question. Just kidding, of course. Just by way of background, in case you don't know what a municipality is, in 1956, the Maryland Constitution was amended with what's known as the Home Rule Amendments, allowing the creation of local governments, including municipal governments. We're called a municipal government because we're structured like a municipal corporation. We have a charter, and we formerly had bylaws, but now we have a code of ordinances. And I mention this only to help explain context for why we have to comply with these two state laws. We, as a municipal corporation, are actually a political subdivision of the state. And so we have to comply with certain state laws. Two very important ones, as Michael noted, are the Open Meetings Act and the Public Information Act. Both are referred to as sunshine laws, which is a general public policy dictating that government business should be conducted in the open. Your residents should be able to observe official business and see their elected officials in action. And it includes committees, if the committees are officially created by the village government, by the council. So I'll just talk about those two laws, and feel free to ask any questions if they come up. First is the Open Meetings Act, which provides that if the council or a committee is holding a meeting, certain things have to be done. The residents have to be given notice that the meeting is going to take place. An agenda needs to be prepared. The residents have to be given the opportunity to come and observe. They don't have to be given the opportunity to participate, just to come and observe. And then after the meeting, minutes need to be prepared and approved by the committee. Michael and Aaron can help with the posting of your meeting notices and agendas. They go on the website. The Open Meetings Act provides that the notice you have to give of meetings has to be reasonable. Reasonable is not defined. Generally, a good rule of thumb is as soon as you know you want to have a meeting, inform Michael and Aaron so that notice can be issued. The agenda doesn't have to be greatly detailed. It just has to state what time you're meeting, where, how to log in if it's going to be remote. And if you know what topics you're going to discuss, you put those on there. If you're at the meeting and you find that you want to add a topic of discussion that's not on the agenda, that's fine. You're not obligated to talk about only what you put on the agenda in advance. So those requirements only come up if a meeting takes place. And a meeting takes place under that law if a quorum of your committee is present, engaged in a discussion of official business. And a quorum means a majority. So if you're a committee of 5, a quorum is 3. Now, I said it only applies if you're talking about official business. If it's a social gathering or you're just meeting on the street to talk about the weather, that's not a meeting under the Act. You don't have to give notice to the public and follow all the Open Meetings Act requirements in that situation. The Act also does not require you to follow all those procedures if you're engaged in what's known as an administrative function. And this is probably about one half of what committees will do. So the law provides that if you're just administering, effectuating an existing law or policy or an existing provision of your charter, you don't have to schedule a formal meeting and go through all those steps. You're allowed to get together and talk about how you're going to implement your duties. The act will be triggered if you're engaged in what's known as an advisory function. If you're getting together to talk about forming a recommendation to give to the council on how things should change, then that would be something you have to meet in the open. So, the common examples are Marty's election committee. If they want to meet to talk about changes in the election rules, then that's an advisory recommendation they're going to give to the council. So the discussions on forming that recommendation need to be open. But when they meet to go over their voter roll to make sure it's accurate, that's administrative because the code gives them that function already. So they're just administering an existing function. They don't have to meet in the open in that instance. Any questions so far? So mostly what the committees are doing are administrative or advisory. So generally speaking, you just got to figure out whether your discussion is among a quorum and whether it involves one of those two functions. And again, doesn't apply to social. But there is one trick here that we have to be aware of. So I said before, the Open Meetings Act applies when a quorum is present to discuss official business. The Open Meetings Compliance Board, which is an agency at the Attorney General's office, which is tasked with offering advisory opinions on compliance, notes that you don't have to be face to face to be present for a meeting. You can be on the telephone. So if there's a quorum on a conference call, that could be a meeting. In a chat room on the computer, that could be a meeting. And most problematic for everyone in contemporary times is email. The Open Meetings Compliance Board has said if you're engaged in an email discussion where the emails are sufficient in number and time that it's the same as being in a room together, then that's a meeting. So we do need to be concerned about not triggering inadvertently a meeting by sending each other emails if the emails are on an advisory function. If you're just emailing each other about administration, then you don't have to worry about the Open Meetings Act. But for example, going back to the election committee, if they started emailing each other saying, I think we ought to think about this change in the election rules. Maybe we should allow or recommend that 16-year-olds be allowed to vote. What do the rest of you think? And that can't be done by email because that would be an advisory function. But if they want to email each other and say, what time should we meet to go over the voter roll so we can make sure that that's up to date? That's an administrative discussion, and that email discussion is okay. So Michael, step in here. Is it true that committee members have the option of getting a village appointed email?
For some of the committees, there are sending emails, and I've already changed the password for those email addresses. So I will be giving it out once everyone's completed their oath of office and conflict of
Okay.
interest forms.
Okay. And the reason I ask that is where possible, I recommend you do official business on the official village email. And we'll explain why when we get to the Public Information Act. If you're a committee that does not have a village designated email, then I would just recommend, you could set up your, VMA council or committee member at Gmail or whatever you want, or just you can still use your private email if you want as well. But I would recommend you drag and drop to a VMA folder those emails if you're going to do it that way. Um, Before we go further into that, though, let me cover one other thing under the Open Meetings Act. So sometimes you can meet in closed session, even though you're engaged in a function that's covered by the act, if you're doing so under one of the 15 exemptions under the act, including getting legal advice. So if, for example, you needed to meet to get legal advice to go over something, we could have that meeting in closed session. It wouldn't need to be open, but you still have to give notice to the public that that meeting is occurring. You have to fill out a form stating what exemption you're relying on. Then you have to have a motion to enter closed session, and you have to mention that in the minutes as well. It's probably going to be very, very unlikely that you'll ever need a closed meeting, but if that need does arise, you can check with Michael and Aaron, and we can help you set that up. The Open Meetings Compliance Board does say, however, that a committee cannot enter closed session unless one member has had Open Meetings Act training, which is available online, even though each committee only need designate one person to have this training. I recommend everybody have it because it'll go over in more detail what we're talking about today, and at the end of the course you can print out a certificate and feel really good about yourself. And Michael could share that link to the online course. It's offered through the University of Maryland. Okay, that's the Open Meetings Act. If there are no questions, I'll move on to the Public Information Act. So this is a similar law that provides the records you receive and create are public in nature, and if residents or other members of the public want to inspect them, they have that right. They can submit a request to inspect those records, and given that, this law provides committee members have a duty to preserve official public records. So, and emails are included. So we'll go to emails first, since I touched on that earlier. Some emails are going to be insignificant, not going to have any public value, like emails saying, I'll bring sandwiches to our meeting tonight. What does everybody want? You don't need to preserve that. But if it's an email that's talking about something of substance, like, what do you think about this or that change to the regulations? Should we tackle that this year? That's something substantive that does need to be preserved. And in that instance, if you're using the official Martin's Editions email, that email will be captured on the server, and Michael and Aaron will be able to access that, so you don't have to worry. If you're on a committee that doesn't have that capability and you're emailing on something of substance, technically you got to preserve that email. So I would ask you to drag and drop it to a folder. And under the Public Information Act, we can't destroy records unless they're destroyed in accordance with a document retention schedule approved by the state archivist, which we have in the village. And with respect to emails, as I recall, it generally says we can delete those every year, after 1 year, if they're no longer needed for public business. So, again, you can set up a folder, and after a year, emails that are no longer needed can be deleted. The Public Information Act does not apply to your personal notes. So if you're taking notes at a meeting for your own use, that's not a public record. But if you email your notes to the rest of the committee, then it does become a public record. If you're writing a report or recommendation, that's a public record. A resident sends you an email making a suggestion or complaining about something, that's a public record. I would say, because we have to comply with the Public Information Act, we should also not use text messaging for official business, because text cannot be readily preserved. Under the act, if we do get a request, that request is going to go to Michael, who's our official designated custodian, and he'll help facilitate response to that request. But the act does say although we have one official custodian, anyone who's actually in possession of a public record is an unofficial custodian and still has to comply with those requirements. I don't anticipate that the committees are going to have many public records that are, of substantive value, except maybe ethics and elections. Those are the two big statutory committees. The rest of you probably aren't going to have to do much to comply. And if you have any questions on the best way to do so, you can certainly ask Michael or Aaron. And if they need to bring me on board, they can. I'm outside counsel. I work at the pleasure of the village. So under current protocol, if you do have a request for legal advice, which is, again, very rare, please run that through Michael, because that needs to be approved before I can start the clock. And that is the Public Information Act. Is there any question on any of that?
And
All right.
just to add to that, Ron, thank you very much. I did send everyone the committee guidelines that the council passed a number of years ago, and those are posted on the website as well. But everyone should have a copy of that. And then one additional thing is Aaron and I drafted an SOP for village communications, and I'm going to cover that right now as a kind of a final thing. And that includes some of the things Ron just talked about, including I will send you all this document, and I'll remember to, or Aaron will take a note right now, to remind me to send you all the link to take that certificate from the University of Maryland. It is very helpful, if you haven't done that, to go ahead and do that. I found it useful. Katie, do you have something to say? You look like you had something to say.
No, I thought Arthur had his hand up, but
Oh,
no, I'm fine. Thanks.
okay. Okay. Arthur, did you have something to say? Okay, well, jump in. Anyone can jump in if you have any comments. The council did see when we met in a strategic planning session at the beginning of this fiscal year to talk about this SOP that I'm about to cover with you all. There's basically 3 steps that we're going to ask from committees this year. The first is around scheduling your meetings. The first meeting for next month, which starts tomorrow already, I can't believe that. Your council liaison will schedule your first public meeting to kind of get you underway. And at that meeting, you will elect your committee chair for the year. And then that committee chair can kind of lead the way at scheduling future meetings. We are asking all committees to schedule their meetings a month ahead of time. And there's a number of reasons for this, but the primary one is we want our calendar to be up to date on our website, and we want to have plenty of time for me and Aaron to post all the notices and to get the newsletter up to date so that everyone knows when the meetings are. And it would be really great, and Katie and I have talked about this a little bit, if the committee meetings happen at a regular interval. So maybe that's something you all can discuss at your first meeting, is maybe the 3rd Monday works for your committee, or the 3rd Tuesday or something. That way it's kind of on a consistent basis and we know when things are happening. All meetings should also be scheduled through me and the village office so that we can compare it to all the other meetings that are happening. We do have 5 committees and task forces again this year, so that caused a lot of confusion last year with multiple meetings happening at the same time and trying to figure out who can administer those meetings. We are going to also ask the council liaisons, if at all possible, to be the hosts of those meetings, whether they're on Zoom, in person in the village office, or a hybrid event between the two. So that's the first piece. The second piece is the submission of meeting documents, and that's for your committee meetings or for the council meeting. If you have a report to the council, we're asking for those 1 week before the meeting. That's so that we can have plenty of time to put together the packet. We can have the agenda for that meeting in the wrap up the week before if we can. All of those kinds of things take time and take a lot of stress to turn around in a short time period. So we're trying to do things easy as possible. So giving the office a little bit of a head start is very much appreciated. And the third thing is the circulation of official committee communications. If you have an article you want to share, or if you have a report you want to post, or we're also asking for those a week ahead of time. And we have a number of sources to distribute information. The village website is obviously a key one. And there's requirements, as Ron just covered, of what needs to be posted and when. Um, there's also standalone emails. We can send standalone emails for you and your committee or task force, and those need to go out in advance of your meetings. So we have a standard thing where we are trying to send meeting reminders in the wrap up the week before and the day before, so that people are getting meeting reminders and notices in a timely manner. And when you see an email, you know what that means. It's tomorrow. So that's the goal for this year. We also have the wrap ups and like I said, the monthly newsletter as well. We want to get all the meetings in there. So I really appreciate all of your help getting these communications kind of dialed in and following this SOP. I will send out this SOP once I'm after this meeting. Let's see, 2 days. Give me 2 days, and I'll send it out. And that covers the SOP. Is there any questions about those kind of standard operating procedures for committees and task forces this year?
I did
Hi,
just,
go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Lori.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I did just have one question about the email and retention of documents and how that carries over from committee to committee. Can every committee see every email that has been produced in prior years? I'm just wondering, mostly because the ethics committee has a confidential email box. And while there's not much in it right now, I could see that you might not want that to be seen in perpetuity.
That's
seen in perpetuity by members of the ethics committee.
Members of future ethics committees.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying, Ron? So
Yes, well, I think the easiest answer would be after a year, it can be deleted.
okay.
So, then we don't have to address the question whether future ethics committee members have that right.
Okay.
I haven't researched that. My initial thought would be no, because it wouldn't be needed for their current tasking unless the item was revived somehow.
Okay.
But yeah, the easiest would be just to purge that after it's no longer needed.
Okay. All right. That answers that. Thank you.
And that's a reminder for me to have an annual process where we go through and delete emails that are older than a year. And we can also at the same time drag and drop all of the archives into a separate folder so that not everyone's, that's helpful anyways, because you don't want to be backed up with a ton of emails from previous years.
Yeah. Can I just comment on that? For some things, it is kind of helpful. Like we had an advisory opinion last year. And for the new member of our committee this year, it would be helpful for him to look at the deliberation process of how we came about the advisory opinion. So I don't know if the committee could have any input for that, or I was just most concerned about confidential emails and what happens to those, because they're not really confidential if anyone can see them in future years.
Yeah, I would agree. And I can look further into that.
Okay.
So you're saying,
I'm saying some of the discussions for things like we had our first advisory opinion this year, and there was a pretty lengthy email discussion. It's an administrative issue, so we didn't need to have an open meeting for it. But I could see how it could be very helpful to a new member of the committee to see how we thought about it and deliberated and to understand the process.
but
So
you're concerned about the confidentiality of aspects of it?
Well, I don't think an advisory opinion is confidential under the code at this point. Or at least
So I'm sorry, I misunderstood the
yeah,
concern.
so I guess I'm asking two different questions. One, we have a confidential email box, which I agree with you should be purged at the end of 1 year. But two, we just have a general email box that I'm not so sure should be purged every year, because there's a lot of deliberations on how we've come up with decisions and like for the advisory opinion, how we worked through that as a committee.
Yeah, so the committee can decide under the document retention schedule. I
Okay,
just pulled it up. And with respect to correspondence, destroy any other material no longer needed for current business. So, it sounds like you're saying those emails are needed for current business because
okay.
they're
Yeah,
helpful
that's very
on
helpful. That's exactly what I
understanding
was
the
asking.
process.
Okay,
I
so
mean, and Lori, you could also, print some stuff out and create a binder, like a training manual for subsequent members, and because you also have SOPs on
we do.
issues and opinions, and you could stick.
And we have a drive that we put the SOPs in for ethics. So, so that I don't think would be purged, Michael.
Right.
But maybe we do. Maybe that's a good idea, Ron. Maybe we take some of these things that we think are useful for future committees and just put them in the drive so that it's not confusing in terms of what gets purged and what doesn't get purged. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, and maybe redacting any names in there, like the person who asked the advisory opinion may not want their question in the record for perpetuity, right? In
Right.
perpetuity.
I agree. Okay.
My question, hi, this is Marty, and again, thank you. This is very helpful. Um, my question actually is very similar to Lori's. The election committee last year voted unanimously that we would like to keep the election records that were on our email, for at least 2 years, because continuity in election procedures is really important and should be, pretty public. I mean, there's no such thing as a secret election procedure. So, Michael, I wanted to make sure first that we do have still last year's election committee records that you have on our email, and that I assume this year's committee will probably decide itself whether it wants to continue that. But last year it was unanimous that we did want to keep the election committee email intact from year to year. So the purge there would be
Well,
minimal, I would think.
yeah, what's up?
Television to change. I press it.
Okay, yes.
Are-
So I can confirm, Marty, that your emails are still there. I haven't purged anyone's emails at this point. And this is really a admin question. The standard retention schedule that we have and follow says we can destroy emails, or delete emails after a year. It doesn't say we have to. So it's not standard
Perfect.
practice for me to do that now. Though I guess that's a question for my council members if they want me to start doing that. It probably is a good idea to kind of purge, unneeded documents, just to keep those folders as clean as possible. But yeah, but we can discuss that later. At this point, your emails are all there. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. And again, same reason as what Lori was talking about. There's a continuity need here for people who are new to the election committee to understand the procedures, and reading the old discussions can be helpful. And
And at some point, I think Ron's right that those should transfer away from the email box into some sort of SOPs. But we can discuss that at a later point. Was there another question there, Marty?
nope, that was it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yasmina, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. I just have a point of clarification for the administrative meetings. Do they fall within the same? I'm thinking, the village events coordination committee. There's a lot of administrative work that goes into just planning the logistics of whether we have purple balloons or orange balloons an event. Do
Yes.
those
Those are important records, Yasmina.
they are important meetings, and our events wouldn't happen without them. But do all of those meetings have to happen within the 1 month schedule published ahead, with the attendance of our village manager? I just want some clarification on that.
Thank you for this question. I really appreciate it because I think we actually went overboard last year with having too many public meetings when a lot of the work that was actually happening was administrative. Exactly. Then the community engagement committee is exactly what I'm thinking of in regards to this. So the answer is no, those do not need to be public meetings. You all can, if you're only discussing administrative meetings, you can meet in your kitchen or call up the other committee members on the phone and do work that way, as long as it's only administrative. If you're making recommendations to the council about which vendors to hire or anything like that, then that would be a public meeting, and you should definitely still have at least several public meetings throughout the year. Ron, you can jump in if there's any.
No, yeah, I would agree. And everything that was discussed there was administrative. And so Michael likely doesn't need that advance notice because there's no public invitation agenda that needs to be issued.
Great question, though.
Great, that's really helpful. I have a second question, which pertains to just sharing of emails or events that we wish for the village to forward. I think from what I've observed, there are a number of different communications that go out. Some which are like, hey, there's a food truck in section 3, we'd like to let people know about it. Or it could be a political matter that we want the village to be aware of and maybe participate in. I'm just curious in terms of the 1 week notice, and if you can give some more clarification about what level of review happens for those specific communications.
Yeah, this is something I'm working on right now with the council, building out kind of a standard editing and approval process that we can just follow, because I get a lot of requests to send all sorts of different types of emails. Some of them really belong on a community listserv that and shouldn't be coming from through an official village communications. But of course, that puts me in an awkward position to tell a resident no. So I'm going to put that off on the council and say, can you say no to this person instead of me? As far as official communications as related to your committee work, that needs to come to me in a week in advance so that I have a chance to review it, and if there's anything that's, you know, maybe not correct, or if I need to involve a council member or the entire council, I have time to do so. So I really do. I'm going to try to keep everyone to that week notice, and this is to the council too. You know, my job's always kind of managing up to volunteers, whether it's the council or the different committees, and asking for more time and more time. So that's going to make us. We're going to make less mistakes because of that, and everyone's going to know what's happening. So I think that's just like a standard best practice. Does that answer your question, or was there an additional one?
It does, and yeah, I feel that's very wise and welcome further discussion at the council level on this. I think it will be beneficial to all the residents.
Absolutely. Yep. And this is another call for the community listserv to be reenacted. I know there's some progress on that, but and I'm sure that'll be a discussion. But I think a lot of things need to happen outside of me controlling hitting send. So
we're working on the listserv, Michael, I promise. We've got a small group of residents who are really trying to get that up and rock and rolling. And I hope we can do it within the next month, but Lord knows it needs it. And the other question I had for you is, you know, sometimes you don't have a week's notice on something. If something comes up suddenly, you know, on elections in particular, like there was some kind of problem, obviously we would be able to, you know, post a meeting so we could have a public meeting if we needed one, right? I appreciate you to have some flexibility, but I want to commend you for having an SOP. You know what a fan I am of SOPs. So everybody knows, you know, how to put their ducks in a row. And I really appreciate the effort there. That is good management. The other question I had was about sharing information. The election committee last year had some discussions about what we would like to post on the committee section of the website. And I know we got a new website coming. Hallelujah. Thank you for that too, because we really need a better website. But the election committee, as I understand it, can in fact say, you know, here's a report we want you to post on our committee website page. Is that still true?
sorry, the question is,
If the election committee had a report that we wanted to post publicly on our election committee page, not just the regular minutes or agendas, but an actual report. You know, in the past, it used to be that the committee could say, yes, please post this. We want this to be public on our election committee page. That would
yes.
still be true, right? That we could, as a committee, say, Michael, please post this?
Yeah, the only thing I'm doing with the SOP is asking for a little bit of standard process and more time. I'm not changing the review process of anything. The only thing that, you know, we ran into last year, Marty, was a lot of the formatting. So I'm working on it as well, both with updating our email distributions tool, and just a clarification on the website. I'm not redoing the entire website. I'm just making edits to some of the navigation tools and stuff on it. So sorry to
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
damper the hopes there. But yes, both those changes are coming, and you will still be able to post your committee reports. No problem.
Thank you.
Yasmina, is that an old hand or a new hand? I'm assuming it's an old hand, but let me know if not. And
It's an old hand.
Okay, great. And is there any other questions?
Well, I would just like to ask, I guess, Arthur, you're one of our liaisons for the election committee this year, and thank you for doing that. I appreciate your attention to election issues. The election committee members have been talking about doing a meeting on Monday, the 14th of October. And as our liaison, can we ask you to officially schedule that for 7:30 on
Okay, let me
October
just look
14th?
at my calendar. What day again?
It's a Monday, 7:30. We're going to try to do meetings on Mondays this year.
Is that a federal holiday?
I don't know.
It is.
You have the day off.
Let's carry the conversations of scheduling meetings offline. This meeting is being recorded too, so it's going to go to everyone. So we'll continue that conversation offline about scheduling.
Mondays look good.
Okay, thank you, Arthur. Thank you, Michael. Will do.
Okay. Any other questions related to the orientation? Hearing none, my Seattle Seahawks just kicked off, so I am going to go watch football. You all have a lovely evening. I really appreciate everyone attending, and thank you, Ron, and thank you, Aaron, for joining.
Ron.
Good night.
Night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you for organizing this.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Many thanks to all. Bye-bye.